Ken Jordan here. That's right, the guy who's actually looking out for you and trying to make sure that you get all the information you need by pretending to tell you stories. I think we're all catching on to what's going on here, right? I tell you stories, fictional stories, and you learn real things. It's not that hard. Sorry if I sound a little bit bitter, but there has been some fascinating stuff going on. Not just behind the scenes, things out in the real world. We are looking at, quite frankly, we're looking at information coming out that if you're able to research or pay attention at all, you're going to notice as being very anomalous. So, that's gonna be 5 of you. Hey guys. Seriously, put your nose to the news and start reading over the next weeks and months. This is just going to be heating up, and if you're paying attention, you're going to start getting what's going on here for real. Okay, something a little lighter, SCP-483. SCP-483 is a standard orange prescription bottle filled with up to 50 spherical gray tablets. The label indicates that it was issued to a Sherman David A., and in place of a prescription name, the label reads anti-aging. The remainder of the label has been torn off. Analysis of the tablets show they are chemically identical to placebos. When SCP-483-1 is ingested, the tablets, by an organism possessing a stomach capable of digesting medication, its effects take place. All existing memories, documents, and records regarding the organism's age are altered, increasing the organism's recorded age by 1 full year. All numerical values, memories relative to the organism's age are altered correspondingly. The ingesting organism displays no biological change, apart from the aforementioned memory adjustment. Medical pills or tablets of any kind which are placed in SCP-483 become these kinds of tablets. Individuals affected by the subject will remember accurately how many years have passed since certain events of their lives, excepting the ingesting subject's date of birth. Affected individuals may be convinced that their interpretation of the subject's age is wrong and revise it. Further ingestion of the tablets by the original subject will reduce the revised age. So, basically, magic tablets that do nothing for you except make everyone else, including yourself, think that you're a year younger for every one you take. Okay, clearly this isn't going to exactly be the subject that I'm talking about today. There are, to the best of my knowledge, no tablets that are specifically like that. What I have seen are, well, 2 things. One, I've certainly seen and heard of various medications and treatments which will cause you to lose age. These are held fairly securely behind locked doors. You and even I are not actually allowed access to these kinds of treatments. However, that being said, it's well established in the medical literature that these things are coming out. What you probably have the most access to is the ability to look at indications of things being said about medical testing that you then hear nothing about. Because trust me, you hear about it when things fail testing. What you don't hear is when they succeed in an anti-aging fashion. For instance, one thing that I heard of several years ago was simply a pill that you took one day, and all it did was return elastin to your skin. That's the only thing that it did. But effectively, this takes your apparent physical age from whatever it is, eventually to looking like you're about 25 or even younger, depending on how weathered you were at 25. Elastin is what prevents your skin from wrinkling. The more you have, the younger you look. Well, functionally speaking, age is pretty much determined by your cellular age and your appearance. It is very possible with this one pill that a person who is in their 90s could suddenly look like they were, well, in their 20s or 30s. There's some filling out in the face of the bone structure, things like that happens over time. A person of that age is going to look a little different if you know what to look for. But, that said, inside 6 months, a person can go from being very old to looking very young. You may have people around you who you think of as being your own age or younger than you, who are actually not. We've had this technology for about 10 years. And trust me, the elites are getting it and you aren't. Not all of them, because they can't de-age in front of your eyes, but the higher up ones who work behind the scenes, they're a young looking crowd now, at least if they want to be. There's also a new treatment going on in, I want to say it's Germany or Austria. One of these two places, where basically what they do is they put you down on a table, they put cold compresses all over your body, particularly around your joints, and then they pump you full over the course of about 6 hours of anti-inflammatories. Well, most age-related diseases have to do with inflammation, not specifically in your joints, but all over your body. This includes things like heart disease, lung disorders, arthritis, even back pain will very often have something to do with inflammation. Now, there are other ways, and there are even cheaper ways of doing the same thing, but the elite can go and in half a day become physiologically, from all markers, much younger. And if this inflammation cycle is turned off, even occasionally, long-term chronic disorders, of which it's believed that about 90+% of all the negative effects of aging are related to this one inflammation factor and a negative cycle of inflammation. Let me explain that one really quick. Basically, you get injured or irritated, part of your body's protective mechanism has things swell and become inflamed. When that happens, the inflammation itself can, at times, be perceived as damage, which causes further inflammation. This is basically where arthritis and certain types of heart disease actually are. That inflammation is then the problem itself, and over the course of years will really make you miserable, tear you down, and eventually even kill you. So you can turn this off. Well, the single most effective way of doing this, other than going to Austria or Germany or wherever it is and paying a doctor $40,000 to turn this off for you, is to fast. Just don't eat anything for over a period of 8 days. That will just kick that system off for you. You should probably do this at least once a year if you're having any kind of inflammation-related problem. Even things like asthma, especially adult onset asthma. Turn this off, and you will be a much happier camper. It's not going to be perfect, and you might have to do it once or twice a year, which I've done this and it can kind of suck, but it really does work. Now, the second portion of the placebo empire is just a straightforward placebo. Doctors have been taught to look at placebos as being a compliance issue. But in medical testing, they have to look at placebo on a physiological level. In other words, if they give you a tablet and tell you in no uncertain terms that this will have a certain effect on you, about 30% of the time, it will actually work, even though it's just a sugar tablet. Literally just something that you ingest every day that has no particular medical benefit in and of itself. Now, in testing, what they have to do is figure out what the placebo effect was for a study, then subtract that, and for a medication to be considered valuable, it has to operate above placebo. The average level of this is between 2 and 10%. So I want you to stop and think about this for a minute. Doctor gives you a pill. He says, this will cause you to de-age. It's an anti-aging medication. Here's the mechanism that it works by. We have two groups taking this, Group A and Group B. The third group just doesn't take anything at all. Group A gets the real pill, Group B gets the sugar pill, and Group C, well, they just go on with their lives and they do nothing particularly useful to us. We use them as the control group. Now, in their findings, what they have to look at are the variation of anti-aging effects. So they take Group B and say, okay, what's the difference between Group B and Group C, between the placebo-having group and the nothing-having group? And they'll say very often, oh, it's 20 or 30%. And then they say, okay, so the placebo effect for this is, let's say, 30%. Now, what's the difference between Group B and Group A? And Group A has to be at least 2% more affected by the drug for it to count as an actual drug. The reason for that is because the placebo effect itself is very much led by a combination of the individual taking the pill and the person who is giving the instructions about it. So if the person giving the instructions knows that, say, Group A is the group that has the real pill, they might influence a certain amount of effect, and really, this is why they do double-blind studies, where both the researcher and the person taking it can't know what's going on, because one of them, knowing that they're getting the real pill, will actually increase the placebo effect so much that it makes the value of the entire thing useless. So, remember, we're giving an anti-aging pill here. Just telling a person convincingly that they have an anti-aging pill can cause them to have the same effect, very nearly, as giving them a real hardcore, complex, modern medication within 2 to 10%. There are some drugs which really, really work. There are some drugs where, when you get right down to it, you're dealing with something that is going to change lives. Normally, they're very, very damaging to the body as well, and have this very solid effect at the same time. But, that being said, they actually do work. Other things are far closer. For instance, aspirin. Aspirin has a pain-killing effect in people that is a little over 2% over placebo. It's considered a very real and valid overall medication, but has a very tiny effect. The anti-heart attack qualities that have been stated for aspirin only work in the United States. In no other country does it work. Even similar countries like England, Great Britain, when they are given aspirin in trials, there was no difference in heart disease for them at all based on having an aspirin. It had an effect that seems very real and valid in the United States and not at all in a different country. Now, there could be environmental factors that allow that to happen. There could be something in the lives of Americans in general, something in our food, something in our water, something in the electrical system, which causes that to happen. But the thought actually is that for some reason, at least with aspirin, when it was given to the people in the United States, they responded by having less heart disease because of the placebo effect. It didn't show up in the testing because this effect is so powerful. Now, placebo itself, I believe, is Latin for I please you. The basic idea of it, and what doctors are taught, is that really your patients will either believe or simply tell you favorable things about what they're going on. You know, you gave me a pill, doctor, I want to please you, so I will pretend that I am not in pain. But you can't pretend yourself out of aging or out of heart attacks, except for, apparently, you can. Now, there are rules to placebos, but I've just point here is that this is an incredibly powerful effect, and for the most part, even though it's a pretty well-known one, we tend to look at it as if this is fictional or woo-woo or some kind of psychic, I don't even know what to call the information, some kind of fake information that doesn't actually exist, when this is something that we have to account for in every major study of medicine and psychology. What we're probably actually looking at is a convincing control and power mechanism. For instance, if a person in control or in charge of you tells you something, you are far more likely to do it than if a random person tells you something. It may be possible that what we're actually seeing is an overriding of your own belief system, that being replaced by the beliefs of someone else, in this case a doctor, who is giving you contrary information, which gets a certain amount of effect from you. Now, this does not mean, when I say that it's 30% effective, that it is only effective 30% of the time. It has generally been seen with medications that most people have an effect from them, and most people have a consistent placebo effect. It's that they work 30% better than having nothing. Or in the case of something like aspirin, you have 30% better or 32% better than nothing at all, which is a fairly decent effect. I mean, if you can turn down pain by 30%, that's not too bad. More powerful pain medications, however, aren't necessarily showing a lesser placebo effect. For instance, heroin still has a placebo effect of around 30%. If you give a person a shot and tell them, this will make you loopy, this will make you really feel good, this will honestly do it for you, they're still going to have most of the heroin-like effects. Yes, that basically means that a lot of people who are doing drugs, things like marijuana, really don't need to be doing them. Once they know what the effects are, they have that capability within them to simply become high if they think that they're getting the drug. Now, there are, again, rules about the placebo effect. There are things that we have discovered over the years that really, frankly, are pretty surprising. Here are some of the main ones. There are more of them, but here are things that you might be able to make useful in your own life. First of all, when a person is given a placebo, you can hand them the pill and say, all right, little Penny, here is a sugar pill. This sugar pill has been invested with the magical thoughts from my brain that will cause you to have anti-aging effects. Here's the mechanism by which it works. You understand it? Okay. Now go home, I want you to take one a day. That person, knowing that they are being given a sugar pill, not being tricked at all, will have the same placebo effect as everybody else. They'll get that same 20% or so. Now, there is a small portion of society, notice I'm saying a small portion, it's about 20% of people, who simply have no placebo effect at all. These people generally assume that everything is always going to have the least or worst effect. Quite frankly, you know who these people are if you pay any attention to them. These are the misery people. These are the people who are going to be doing poorly in almost everything. And it's not the same as chronic depression. Because if you give a chronically depressed person a sugar pill and tell them it will make them happy, they will become happy to a level of about 30%, like everything else. So it's not simply the biological disorder of being depressed. We're talking about people who constantly doubt everything and who will refuse to be happy, who will refuse to do okay, who will refuse to please you or the doctor or anyone because something in them causes them to really want to rebel against everything else. Basically, what's happening there, I believe, is that they're getting what they want. They're getting a placebo effect. They're in fact probably getting what is referred to as a nocebo effect, or I don't please you, which is not actual Latin, but is an actual term that's used in medical studies, where they're subconsciously sabotaging anything going on with a given pill or placebo, and will at times actually undo real medical biological effects, their body and mind fighting off the actual beneficial effects of a new drug in order to be able to report that it's not working, that it's not doing anything. These people can have their minds changed. They can learn to behave differently. If you do this, remember, it's up to you, and your conscious involvement in things can eventually help change your subconscious mind. So, you can know about the placebo, and that's really important, because it means that if you take, I don't know, let's say something fairly inert, like an aspirin, every morning. Don't do this if you're a kid, but as an adult, if you take an aspirin, and you look at the aspirin and say, this aspirin is going to invest me with certain traits throughout the day. Here's how this is going to work. This is what's going on with it. I know this is the case. You pop the pill. It will have an actual effect on most people most of the time, even if you're telling yourself. And that's the second part of this. The placebo isn't just for doctors anymore. You can cause a placebo effect in yourself. In general, we look at placebo as being fake, but you can have a real drug effect on your own body simply by swallowing a pill and saying, here are the effects of this pill. It doesn't work as well with an imaginary pill. You still get some effects. If you imagine taking a pill, it will still give you some effects, but if you have something physical that you can swallow, and quite frankly, it doesn't have to be a pill, you can get a bunch of small candies. Think something along the lines of Tic Tacs. Put them in a brown pill bottle that you get from a health food store or something along those lines. Now, decide and maybe even write out the properties of these pills. Let's say they double your endurance over what a person would normally have from the amount of exercise that you're doing. Even doubles each day the benefits of your new endurance program over what a person not taking these would have. It will not only work, but when the Soviets did a study on the herb ginseng about this, which is a real drug, it has real effects, but also has a well-known placebo effect. What they found was that when they gave people ginseng, they were able to increase their ability to show endurance by 12 times daily what the other people who weren't getting anything in the group showed. The thing there is that the placebo group had the same effect. 1,200% effect. Now, this probably shows that people just need a little bit of a nudge toward being able to have far greater endurance than we normally show. But this also does show that there can be real-world effects to things like that. So simply making up your own drug in your own mind, it does really work best if you have something that looks medical around it. Even though you know that you were the one who put the little white Tic Tacs with their strange little shape in your little brown bottle, and you take one out of the medicine cabinet every morning and pop it, knowing what the effect will be that you made up, knowing you made it up, you will very often get very close to the full measure of these effects. Now, the medical system does not view things this way. They are taught very carefully to believe that placebo means fake. Placebo itself, however, is not treated medically as if it means fake. They treat it as if these are real effects that are going on, and then later on will recondition their thoughts to believe that what they're seeing is just a person falsely reporting what is going on. People only fake having more endurance in these tests. They don't actually have it, even though they're able to run 12 times further than the people next to them. People present themselves as having less heart disease, and perhaps are even making better life choices, causing them to produce these consistent and powerful findings that are as good as the drug being given. Very nearly. Now, don't get me wrong, this does not mean there are no real drug effects. It just means that by and large, most of the drugs that you're being given would really have a similar effect if they handed you anything and told you that it was going to be effective. Now, this does not, of course, cause other people to have effects because you take a drug, or does it? Think about this for a minute. What if I gave you a drug and I said, all right, Mr. and Miss Public, this drug is going to make you more likable. It's not just going to cause you to become more likable, to produce the brain chemicals and the feelings of a more loving, kinder person, which will make people like you more. It's not just going to make you more outgoing. It's also going to cause you to produce a pheromone, a set of chemicals in your system, which will cause people around you to enjoy being around you more. Now, this is a complex situation, of course, and it will take a little bit of time being around you for these effects to fully take place, but they will be very powerful, and you're going to really be drawing in probably 10 or 20 times the number of new friends, acquaintances, people who think favorably of you over the next year, as long as you take one of these daily. Well, to a big percentage, it's going to work. Now, are you going to be pushing out pheromones that will make people like you, or bodily chemicals where on contact will become, say, addictive to other people? Yes, you honestly will. You honestly will begin to do that more than other people. And it will have a real-world effect that over time will cause you to be more liked than you would have been otherwise. Probably by the amount set for at least some people. And then you have that 20% who will do this and say every morning, well, this isn't going to work. And they will get the results they want as well. But they would get those same results if you handed them speed and said, here you go, this is a worldwide, well-known pick-me-up. Yeah, there are 20% of people who, if you hand them speed, will fall asleep. That isn't a joke. Those same people, if you give them anti-anxiety drugs, will become more anxious. If you give them antidepressives, they will become more depressed. That is the nocebo effect. But again, it can overwhelm real drugs being given to them. Now, hopefully you're not going to be that person, because this is a powerful tool that you can use in your real life. Yes, you're going to hear doctors and scientists say, well, that's not how placebo works. But again, this is how placebo is studied and used. This is what actually is going on in their own testing. They then later will make up rationale for it to only be inside your mind and only be make-believe. They really, really are desirous of this being within things that can be easily explained. But again, that's for a reason. So you could have an SCP that, to an extent, causes other people's behavior around you to change, like the one being discussed right here, which was, of course, SCP-483. Now, I'm not saying that you have to use this as a constant tool in your own life. There is one last thing that I would like to point out to you, though. If you decide to use a mechanism like this, think of it as something like self-hypnosis or play acting that actually will work on your subconscious mind. If you use this, using it more makes it more effective than using it less or holding it back for only special things. So if you do this daily, you're going to get better results than if you only pop a pill twice a year for pain, let's say. Now, you'll still get effects if you use it that way. If your Tic-Tac pill bottle is, a special but legal pain-relieving drug that only you can get because you're the one making up the rules for your pill bottle, you're going to have very powerful effects from that in the main, unless you're one of those 20%. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say, if you're bothering to listen to things about SCPs, and you've gotten through 30 minutes or however long this actually is of me telling you about this kind of effect and how to use it, you aren't one of those people. You're really not going to be that kind of person, because those people are inherently closed-minded. That is the kind of person who becomes a professional debunker, the kind of person who will disprove anything in order to self-aggrandize, basically. There is a portion of the closed-minded debunker mentality that is about ego. That is about enforcing their ego on the world, and basically is saying, I know how everything works. I know the world, and the world is this very narrow thing that I can understand and control. Well, unfortunately, that isn't the way that the world really works. Closing off other options doesn't actually prevent the world or reality from being what it is. It just helps these individuals feel better about themselves and their ability to handle things, which has been a great technique for the last several thousand years on our planet. It's about to not be that great of a technique anymore, which is our entire point in doing this. So if you've read between the lines here, you have a possibly new technique that you can use to get almost any effect you want. And I want you to stop and think about that for a minute. You can start taking tomorrow a new wonder drug that will make you twice as intelligent as you have been, if you decide to. You can start taking a super soldier serum that will make you stronger than a person taking steroids and working out would be able to get. That will make you faster than your biological potential would have allowed otherwise. You could take a drug that will simply activate your ability to have a better memory. Or possibly to simply produce pheromones that will make you a more likable and enjoyable person to be around. There's almost no limit to what a human being could have going on through something like this, and you could have a medicine chest filled with things that will have these powerful effects for you. And they're going to be as good as the drugs that you could get even in a secret program, if that's what you want to do. You don't have to. This is just one idea, one possible coping mechanism for what's going to be happening. It's something to think about. It's something to possibly work on if you wish to do that. Obviously, whatever you're doing, keep it legal-ish, or at least don't get caught. And you're far better off being able to put together a bottle of Tic Tacs with quote-unquote magical properties than you are attempting to garner a real drug operation. So, yeah, placebo effect. How much of our life is ruled by something like this? Well, I don't know. We've never been able to really tack that down. It is very possible that the supposed 30% rate is something that we've actually held placebo down to rather than built it up to. Meaning, you might be able to make up a pretend drug that will have real effects that you do all on your own that will, in the end, be more powerful than the medications that you could get through the medical system. And cheaper as well. I'm not saying don't trust the medical system at all. These are some good men and women who are trying very hard to help you to be healthy. But I'm saying that they're not going to give you a drug that will make you telepathic. you might be able to give yourself one, though. Keep that in mind. And thanks, everybody.